I watched it step by step, how Allah allowed things to unfold. 1977 was such a, what you would call it, a pivotal year. It was the year that things changed. We ended up going overseas together. You know, we left America. He just came back from the Caribbean, and Idi Amin had sent and invited him to attend the first African Arab Summit Conference in Cairo, Egypt, with all of the heads of state from Africa and the Arab world. There hasn't been a conference like that since. And it was during the time that we were making Umrah, and we were making our tawaf around the Kaaba. And I'll never forget his words. He said, Aziz, look at them, they're dead. They're like they're worshiping this stone. He said that I'd like to bring 10,000 Muslims here to Mecca, followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Then we went to Uganda. And we went to the northern part of Uganda where the Langis and the Acholis live. And they asked him to speak. The people spoke the local Langi language, or they were Acholis, but the language that they could talk to all of the people of Uganda was Swahili. So the minister had to speak through two translators. And he told me after, he said, I didn't know what I was going to say. So the only thing I knew to say was the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because the people of Uganda are beautifully black people. And he taught on the beauty of the black man and black woman. And through two languages, the people were cheering him. And then when we were finished, we were on our way back to Kampala. He said, you see, Aziz, the only thing that works is the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
No uniformed policemen assigned inside this ballroom.
And we are going to pick our heroes from today on.
I'm from the world. I'm God. I'm the real God.
When I left Mecca and came back and decided to rebuild the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I had to make an announcement of such. And when I did that, then all of the forces that would come against me did.
The year is 1977. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has now been physically absent for 30 months. The great Nation of Islam is gone. Wallace Muhammad, who was chosen by his family to succeed the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, wasted no time making changes to his father's teachings. The community under his leadership is no longer called the Nation of Islam. The name has been changed to the American Muslim Society. The FOI, or the military training of men who belong to Islam in North America, is gone. The angelic training of women, known as the MGT, or Muslims Girl Training, is gone. The foundational teachings of Master Fard Muhammad, accept your own and be yourself, which had taught black people that it's okay to be black and to love yourself no matter who you are, those principles were abandoned. Wallace steered his followers toward Arab customs and traditions. Seeing the need of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and being inspired by Brother Jabril's book, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan decides to take on the seemingly impossible task of rebuilding the Nation of Islam. With no money and just Brother Jabril and his family at his side, the odds are heavily stacked against him. This announcement to rebuild the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's work upset many people. They felt it was a direct threat to Wallace's leadership and planned to stop him at all cost. The minister's bold stance had now put him in a dangerous position.
Vernon Jarrett, may God be pleased with my dear brother. A tape was put in his hands of something that was said at the mosque where my life was threatened. And Vernon Jarrett wrote an article, I think it's the Tribune that he wrote for, and that article saved my life. Governor Ogilvy, Ronaldo said, you need to go and meet him. He was a governor of the state of Illinois. Well, I met this former governor in his office with Ronaldo. He was giving me counsel, and he said, if you are to avoid assassination, you've got to get out in the public and stay in the public. I thanked him. He was very gracious. He was very kind. And I remembered something that Elijah Muhammad said. He said, whenever you plant a seed in the earth, it sends a root down long before it sends a shoot up. And that root is what allows it to have the strength that when the shoot comes up, they may try to pluck it up, but its root being secure is difficult. So I said, no, I'm going underground. I'm gonna do the very opposite. And I refused to talk to the media. I refused to do anything but move quietly. And I went into cities throughout America, setting up study circles, myself and a brother named Jabril. In some cities, there may have been 3 or 4 study circles, but they never knew each other, because if there was a disease in this cell, I didn't want it spread to the next.
It was difficult because we had to organize cells. The minister's system was you could go in the city and have 3 study groups, and they don't even know each other. So we began to build like that. It was crisscrossing the country. I would go to New York, or once a week I would go to Detroit. It was near Chicago. The minister would go to Los Angeles, then fly to Washington, then he'd go up to New York. And that's how we were able to continuously build a nation.
Minister Farrakhan's decision to rebuild the Nation of Islam was indeed a true leap of faith. But God rewarded his courage and faith by placing special people in his life. People who were inspired by his courageous attempt and who, in different ways, would help him on this mission to rebuild the work of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
I want to name persons that were supportive and kept me alive. There was Hakeem Madhubuti. There was Georgia and Lou Palmer. A blind person that has a seeing eye dog is a blessed person. I'm in Chicago. I don't know Chicago. Lou Palmer was my eyes, and Georgia. There was Hannibal Afrique, some of the nationalist community, and then the Hebrew Israelites. Asiel Ben Israel, there was no FOI then because I was literally just getting started. Then I went down into Mississippi, and I'm preaching by myself. And followers came right up to walk with me. I went from Greenville to Greenwood to Cleveland, and everywhere I went, somebody heard this bold preaching and would come out of the woodwork and stand with me. I came back to Chicago. Renault Robinson, well, they were with the African American Patrolmen's League. And Renault invited me to a national meeting that they were having at the McCormick. And I was the principal speaker. And I spoke, and those black policemen from all over the country just fell in love with Farrakhan. So when I started to rebuild Elijah Muhammad's work, Renault and Howard Sappho. They called their brother policemen in other cities. When I went into that city, the police would come out. We with you, Farrakhan. I would go speak. They were my security. I wouldn't be here if it were not for the African American Patrolman League and Renault and Howard Sappho and all of the wonderful brothers and sisters around the country that protected my life, because my life was in danger, you know? But, you know, God is great.
Against all odds, the minister stayed persistent and continued to travel the country tirelessly, spreading the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The more he worked, the more he was blessed. Many people, the majority non-Muslim, were touched and inspired by the minister to help.
God made friends for me, and these wonderful people opened doors that allowed me to grow from their houses of worship. There was a Reverend Al Sampson opened the door of his church, Reverend Porter, Father George Clements, Father Flavor. But these are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people, and I can't thank God enough for the inspiration that they have given me.
Kenny Gamble giving the minister speaking engagements. Kenny was making millions of dollars in the music, but Kenny himself, who was not a Muslim, knew that there was something special about him. There were other people who knew the same thing and would give opportunities. They were like angels that Allah put around him. It was difficult. There was no money. And his son Joshua, who would carry the cassette tape duplicator, and that's the money that we use, because many of the people who wanted him to come didn't have big fat honorariums. But when the college season came, the students agitated to get money in their budget to get Minister Farrakhan. And even when they didn't have it, if they provided the platform, he would go and talk to the students. And this is the way he was able to bring money in and begin to do the thing. He raised enough money to buy the books of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He bought a duplicating machine. Then he bought a typesetter to print the newspaper, you know.
It wasn't millions, it wasn't thousands. It was just whatever the minister was blessed to receive as an honorarium for his speaking engagements from the different colleges and universities that invited him to speak. And he used every honorarium to help in the building of the Nation of Islam.
Minister Farrakhan invested every cent he had into rebuilding the Nation of Islam. In those early days, he didn't ask his helpers for anything. In a world full of thieves, he wanted to prove that he was an honest man. He took the little money he would earn from speaking engagements and tapes to buy anything he could to further the cause. His mind was set on rebuilding the nation, and there was nothing anyone can do to stop this man on his mission. He didn't have an office space to work out of, but the minister made no excuses. He, along with his family and a small team of volunteers, worked tirelessly right from his home.
24/7, 365. 24/7, 365. We met at his house, 9415 South Damon, in Beverly Hills, Chicago. Yeah, we met every day.
Brother Wahid, he called me at my mother's house. That's where I was staying. He asked, would I go to Port Washington, Wisconsin, to pick up the final call paper? I said, yeah, I'll go, right? So I rode with Minister Godfrey. I believe we had to go to Port Washington, Wisconsin, because nobody in Chicago would print the paper for Minister Farrakhan. So that's how I first started, I guess you can call it volunteer helper, right? At the house on 9415 South Damon. From that home, yeah, he had a recording studio in the basement too. He was working on Let Us Unite, Let Us Unite. Mother Khadijah bought him a Walkman. That was the first Walkman I ever saw. So he would have the Walkman in listening to the recording, I guess. That house did everything almost that you're doing at the final call was being done in that house, including laying out the final call paper.
Look, it was family members that would come in. We all found a place to rest our head in a corner somewhere on the carpet. But those were great days because the excitement to build. And Donna laying out the paper, and Mother Khadija in her cubicle keeping meticulous records and accounts. One of the best accountants that the nation ever had. She accounted for every single penny.
Mother Khadija was, well, excuse the term, man, she was the boss, man, you know what I mean? But I think she functioned like more or less like the accountant, supervisor, shipping and receiving. Mother Evelyn was there, and she assisted Mother Khadija. Mother Tainetta Muhammad would come by periodically. Brother Mustafa, Joshua, Lewis, Jr., Abner, Colliday. That was their house, that was their home, right? So I was there with everybody almost every day. You know what I mean?
That's where the nation began, was from the basement of the home of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It was from that home that he had dinners and meeting with all kinds of people. And I look back, I go, how did we do it?
There was a brother, his name is Ibrahim Muhammad. He was an assistant to me in the beginning. We started the FOI in the cellar of his house, not in the basement, but in the cellar. Wali Sadiq, he allowed us to have FOI in his place.
So we had an FOI class in Wali Sadiq's place. He had an abandoned place with holes in the roof. So while the minister is delivering the message, I could look through the ceiling like this and see the clouds going by, right? The minister would get out of his car, come to the rostrum with his full-length cashmere coat, his Dobbs hat, and his suit and bow tie on, and teach from the rostrum. And you know, like when you outside in the winter, that white stuff that come out your mouth, it would be coming out of his mouth. That's how cold it was up in there.
Some were with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but most of these were brand new people that were attracted to me in my going around the country preaching. And I never put anyone in authority over them. I called it a study cell. And we resurrected the books of Elijah Muhammad, Message to the Black Man, How to Eat to Live, Fall of America. So I had them studying a word with a study group facilitator.
And the minister actually used to speak right across the street from where I lived. And some of the children that I knew and grew up with used to always say, we're going over here with the Muslims, we're gonna eat. After the meeting, they're gonna feed us. And they would all go to the meeting. I would never go to the meeting. I got a chance to move out of that neighborhood. I moved into an apartment complex and ran into Brother Abdullah in the nation, working hard. And he invited me to his home to sit down and talk and have fish. But then he gave me a message to the black man.
My mom and my sisters, they happened to hear the minister speaking. This was before he had any home to speak. He would be speaking at the church, or he'd speak at a place on 47th, the King Drive, called the Fuller Building. And they would try to get me to come with them. You know, they were like, you gonna come hear the minister speak? I never said I wasn't. You know, I said, well, yeah, I'm gonna come, but I never made my way there either.
There was a study group at Brother Linward's home in Plainfield. He had cleared out all his living room and dining room furniture, so it was set up like a mosque. The believers received me, and it was a beautiful group of believers. We didn't actually know where all the mosques were. I can say that Plainfield was very powerful. Newark had not yet begun, but shortly thereafter they begun. New York was a very small group of believers. As a matter of fact, what we would do in Plainfield is we would meet in the morning, have our study group, and then go to New York to the Harlem State Office Building, where we would also conduct our study group or mosque meeting. And Brother Linward, at the time, would conduct that meeting. That's where I met GM, Grandmaster Anthony, and many other believers. So we did two. And then it went into the Bronx at the Savoy Ballroom. That was before we went into Brooklyn. But yeah, so we did both. But we didn't know about what was going on in other cities. New Brunswick, I'm sure they had a small circle. I think that there was something going on in Atlantic City at the time as well.
And I started going to the study group up at Howard. He would fly in, hit DC, hit Philly, hit New York. The minister was rebuilding during that time. My brother had a funeral home. So when the minister would come in, I would go and get his limousine. Pick the minister up in the limousine, big time, you know. Say, minister speaking in Philly, let's go. Everywhere the minister went, we would go. All over the country. I mean, Richmond, he was just, that minister was flowing, boy.
You got where he was going, whatever way you could. We drove all over the country. And, you know, we hustled and sold this and sold that, you know, in order to make the money, you know, to be able to do it.
His speaking engagements, and wherever they were, we would get in the car and go. If he was in Boston, we got on a bus and went. If he was in Chicago, we came to Chicago.
Getting in the car, meeting the minister in a city, he would go by plane. Mustafa, Joshua, and myself would go in the car, put in the trunk the duplicators and tapes. And by the time the minister would arrive either in Boston or New York or whatever city on the East Coast, we would be right there at the airport to receive him. We would drive through the night.
From his speaking engagements, he took that money and bought the Final Call building. He didn't ask us for anything for that.
I remember going with him when we first walked through the building, and it was a funeral home. Before that, a bank. And, you know, the minister, once he sets his mind on something, it's done. It's just done. So that was a great accomplishment, a great victory, and the joy of the believers at that time, because, you know, we didn't have a place in Chicago. We were over on 47th Street.
Final Call all day, all week, all the time.
We worked, you know. On the second floor, there was an office, and certain things had to be typed up. So I was always working nonstop. I was typing. Whatever they needed to do, that's what I did. I just worked. But we had a handful of believers, maybe 100, 200, you know, if that.
It was like an incubator. It was more like a development stage or place for babies. Baby in Islam, and our whole expression was trying to learn how to emulate the great stories that we would hear of the Muslims. So we would, you know, we would try to be what we heard of them. And all we had was our imagination, because a lot of them didn't come to help during those times.
In high school one day, there was a brother who asked me if I would go to the Final Call building with him. And I was surprised that he knew about it. Like, what's at the Final Call? I was just probing him. He said, Minister Farrakhan speak over there. And the minister had a radio broadcast at the time on a station called WBEE in Chicago. And I heard the minister on that radio. And I was like, wow, I'd like to see him. But I never got around to it until the brother invited me. So Sunday was our day to go. It was, I think it was Easter Sunday. He didn't show up, so I'm looking around for him. He wasn't there. So I'm contemplating, man, should I go in here by myself? Or it was one of the brothers outside, and he said, brother, are you trying to come in? And I said, yeah, I'm coming in. He brought me in, and that's when I heard the minister for the first time in person. And I was so touched by what he was saying. You know, when I would hear the minister speak, I was like, man, I know God is protecting him, but he needs people to help secure him, or I can't say really secure him because Allah is the best protector, but to kind of make him comfortable. I was in FOI class, and me and several other brothers, we were selected out of the class to be a part of a training, which was to be to escort the minister from his home to the final call and to other places that we would be going to. We started training to do that with the vehicles, cars, and evasive driving, defensive driving. That's how I started.
We used to get into a lot of fights. And every time there was a fight, I would somehow end up in all these different fights. Around the final call, around the mosque, different venues, or every time there was something, I would always find myself in the middle of these fights.
I recall being at the final call when we were told that there was some attack on the outside of the final call and that the sisters needed to be secluded in a specific area. We had heard that that might happen, but because the final call on the lower level has a lot of glass, we had to figure out where we could be. But truthfully, we wanted to go and fight. I remember there being some who came to the building and there was a fight, and I could hear it in the hall and I could hear it outside the front door. You could hear a lot of voices being raised, but we were not allowed. Of course, we had to stay and lock each other down.
We had great opposition from the former believers under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that resented the minister's effort. Then you had the splinter groups that were doing what they thought they should do in the remembrance and in the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So there was a lot of tension in those days. And not to speak of the enemy, but the internal dynamic was the most disconcerting, because you now have to deal with these different factions.
A little hostile, because Silas group, the other opposition, but the other Muslim group, they didn't really like the minister and they didn't like us. But one thing about that was very consistent with the minister. He told us to act as if they didn't exist. Do not fight back. We would be on the corner starting off with the newspaper. They would come up and they knew we were ready now. But the minister told us never be the aggressor from the very beginning. The difference between them and us, we hadn't been evolved by the minister to be less emotional, retaliatory, because we was hard, man. Whatever you said back then, man, we came with the teaching, we ain't backing down, this, that, and other, right? I don't remember a time when he taught us not to like Imam Warifdeen Muhammad or anybody in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's family. We always honored and respected them, even if their followers didn't respect us.
1981, at the Auditorium Theater, I said we would have our first Savior's Day. The Auditorium Theater holds 4,200 people. I would say we were about 500 short of filling it. Kwame Ture, he said, well, Farrakhan, you said you would rebuild it, and here it is.
And right in '85, that's when we're launching Power, people organizing, working for economic rebirth. So now the nation is thriving, we're moving forward. We're starting to see the progress of the movement, of the direction of the mind. You know, we're trying to now improve the condition, produce products. And that was the first time that I got to travel with the minister and the brothers. And that was to Cobo Hall, 1985 of January, Power at Last. 12,000 people, 50 below.
I would like to say to the black leadership, to the black scholars, and to the black educators, stop being afraid to stand up on the side of truth and justice.
By 85 October, we were at Madison Square Garden, and 50,000 people came out, and only 26 or 27,000 could get into the main arena, and a smaller arena that held 6,000, we packed it all.
October 7th, 1985, I saw something that I had never seen before. When the fire department outside said that it was already sold out, then the people literally tore the doors off of Madison Square Gardens. They literally did that. I know that. I was in that door. Once we got it settled and we did bring the order back, you had people with $50 bills, $100 bills. Well, we can't change it. We don't have any change. That's okay. It's okay. Give me the ticket. A $2 ticket. They filled Madison Square Gardens, which held 25,000. There were at least 35,000 people in there because everybody was standing.
I remember being very, very aware of the atmosphere because of the Jews and what they thought and what they put out there about our beloved minister. And going back into New York, we knew that this was going to be very, very thick and very serious.
Christian and Muslim and Jew, believer and non-believer, stay away from Madison Square Garden.
So we prepared our minds as best we could. So when we got into New York, if I recall correctly, the minister, of course, he didn't want us to advertise MGT. So we were modest. We were not in headpieces and fezzes. We just dressed in a way that would allow us to kind of manage through. So we stayed across the street, the video crew. We went in a group and we had to work our way through this massive crowd that was trying to knock the doors down and passing people overhead so that they could get in. And it was just amazing. And I think that I was kind of in a trance because I had never seen anything like this. I just remember standing up on that podium, the riser, and seeing the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan come out with the vanguard around him. Oh my Allah.
Security was on high alert for him. You knew that it was going to be trying, and you knew that you had to have the full armor of God on in order to deal. And the climate was so hateful. So you're always in a state of alertness. The sisters were told at that time from myself to not allow anyone in the diamond, and we meant just that. So if it were a brother or what have you, there were to be no breaches whatsoever, and they would have gotten dealt with. Yes, sir. They were very fearless sisters, very strong and dedicated, and loved the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, loved the minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We were there to give our life, if need be, to save his. That's the way it goes.
He held a joint FOI and MGT class, and he let us know that the mosque and Muhammad University was available. And he asked all of us, each one of us in the nation would donate $1,000 so that we could get the mosque at 7351 South Stony Island and Muhammad University of Islam. And so I got up to leave while he was talking. And the lieutenant named Wendell, he told me, he said, "Brother, you can't leave, the minister's talking." I said, "Yeah, he already told me what he wanted. You know what I mean? I'm gone, right?" you know what I mean? So
we were very, very enthusiastic about the idea. And I recall us getting in a car and going over to the mosque on Stony Island and seeing it in disrepair. I recall saying that we're going to get this back. And I remember the gates, and they needed repair, and it looked like a diamond in the rough. And I do recall us being very excited about finding our pennies and dollars and doing whatever we could to acquire the property. I do remember the first time we went into Mosque Mariam to look at it, and it had green carpet, it had no chairs in the sanctuary. And we looked up and we looked around, and we were thinking about what we could do to make this as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had envisioned it. So it was on. It was on raising money for chairs, doing whatever we needed to do to acquire.
The minister, he never really saw the final call as the mosque or the temple he always referred to it, as you probably heard him say, as the Final Call Administration Building. You know, it wasn't really like the home that we were supposed to be at. When the opportunity came, he sent Brother Leonard to negotiate on getting the mosque back. And the figures came back, I think, 2.175 million or something. And we had a small group, you know. We had a small group, and that was a big figure for a small group. But the spirit of the minister and the drive and the love that he showed to us and the passion for that house, to get that house back and what it represented, he put that in the believers. He let us know what it was about. And he asked every believer to give $1,000 toward that, and we would be able to accomplish that goal. In my mind, at that age, I was like, man, how am I gonna get $1,000? I don't even have a job.
I don't even have a car. How am I gonna get $1,000? I was working for the city of Chicago at the time for the mayor's office of employment and training, and they had a credit union. And I said, I'm gonna go and borrow the $1,000. Never did this in my life, and they turned me down. So I said, oh, well, I'm not gonna be defeated. I went back, I wrote them a letter. I said, I really, really, really need this money. Whoever was in charge of giving the loan out, I compelled them to re-examine the application, and they gave me the loan. And I had my $1,000. And in a sense, that was the parting of the ways for a lot of the believers. A lot of the believers did not make that journey. You know, they could not see or find it in themselves to do that first $1,000. Now, mind you, there were three. There was a drive for $1,000 and another drive for the $500 for the seats, and then $2,000 that we had to, you know, come up with so that we could secure the mosque. And it was very difficult. And a lot of people, it was like, I want to say it was like being in the womb. You know, you've got sperm on this side. You're just going to a goal, but some of the sperm drop off, and then you turn around and you look, and they're not there. But you know that you have your eye on the goal, and the goal was to get that $1,000. A lot of my friends did not make it. A lot of them. A lot of people that I started out with. I remember the minister coming back telling us that we would get extensions, after extensions, you know, they gave us extensions. I didn't really have any concept what that was about. I just knew that we had to go and raise some more money. And we had these little cans with the minister's picture on it, and we went to the Taste of Chicago with these cans. Only thing that I remember is it was very hot, you know, because it was in July. But we did what we had to do, and we enjoyed it. We worked. We organized together. We would have fish fries. We would just go up and down 79th Street. There was nothing else on our plate but getting the mosque and school back. I remember it just being a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun.
During this time, I'm a young lifeguard, and most of our works was summer months, you know, coming out of high school. And when the minister asked us to raise $1,000, I didn't have $1,000. And I was not working at that time, full time, and neither was Haroon. So what we did was we got 3 of his tapes. We got The Color Purple, the tape he did in Libya, and we got Madison Square Garden. And we would go out every day with these tapes and sell them for $5 to $10, $3 to raise the monies that we needed to do our part in getting the mosque. It wasn't as complicated as we thought, because it was really just the unity of us that was needed to bring about the results that was desired. Everybody participating. So in the instruction, he also gave an order. And the order was that if you did not complete this goal, that you could no longer walk with him, because you did not exercise the faith of a believer to be able to go out and raise $1,000 for us to retrieve the mosque. So we all worked hard to get it. And no one was actually put out that I know of. But the bottom line is, it was just the way the instruction came down that inspired us. And we would be out there, me and Haroon, and Haroon would always say, man, I'm not letting this, you know, I'm not letting these people get us put out, man. I'm getting this money. They're gonna give me some money tonight. And we would go out there and we would raise the money, brother. And we would go all up and down Stony Island, Michigan, downtown, to the nightclub. We would go to everywhere just to try to raise our portion of the money.
So myself and brother Rashad, Tyrone at the time, we decided that we would go out in the streets and try to get the money, because that was an outlet through the sale of the tapes, the lectures, the messages that the minister provided. And the people were buying them. They was buying them, and we was making money. We would take that money and put it on our pledge. Only thing we would get was our shoe shine and something to eat every day. That's it. The rest to the pledge. And we must have sold about 500 tapes in the streets of Chicago, maybe 500 or more, because we both were able to get our pledge that way.
I went to the bank, I only had $100 in the bank, but the way Allah would have it, the man I was talking to was instrumental in the financing or whatever financial transactions took place when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was building the palace. And he told me if I had something that I could use for collateral, he's gonna be going to a meeting, and he believed that he would be able to help me, right? So I didn't have anything worth $1,000, so the only person I could think of was going to my grandmother's house because she lived close to the bank. So I told my grandmother what I just told you about what the man at the bank said. She went in her room and came back and handed me the title to her brand new Chrysler. And she said, go back and ask him, is this worth $1,000? I almost started crying, man. Excuse me. She said, go back and ask him, is this worth $1,000? Bottom line, I got the $1,000.
We had these boards in the back of the final call, and they had our names on it. And the minister would always be at the top. We had 1,000, but he had 10,000 or 20,000. So we could never, do the minister in terms of, it was a righteous competition, but it was like, oh, I can't do 20,000, but I'm going to get this $1,000. But he was always at the top of the board. Minister Louis Farrakhan, $10,000 or $20,000. And, he would come by and, give us encouragement. But I just remember there's one day that was very, very, very significant. The minister came before us, and we needed to get a certain amount of money. Otherwise, we might not have gotten the mosque or the school back. So we started driving, and the minister started driving, and people were pulling the money out, and we were giving. And then all of a sudden, money started coming down from the third floor. It was literally raining money from the third floor. We got that money that day. There was no doubt. There was nothing other than, we have to get the mosque and the school back. That was the vision that he gave to us. He gave us that vision, and we moved out on it.
I feel strengthened by the presence of some of our laborers from around the country. But I want to say we started with 2 people, and 10 years later, we didn't know what God would do for us. We believed. And now, we're on our way back. A national center. I'm very proud this afternoon that poor people in less than 3 months responded to our call. Poor people, not the rich, put together their nickels, dimes, and dollars. As of last Thursday, we raised $1,900,000. I want to let you know that even though on Thursday of last week, we only had $1,900,000. If we didn't close on Thursday, we would have had to pay a penalty of $465 per day, retroactive to the first date of closing, which was May the 16th, which would have cost us $34,000, and every day that we didn't close from that point on, it would be $460 some odd a day. So we had to close. Leonard Farrakhan Muhammad negotiated the fastest loan in the history of that bank, and the vice president of the bank in charge of lending, and the chairman of the board, and the president, and the board members said, "What? What you want, Farrakhan?" And the vice president of the loan department went to the closing, bringing the bank check and our check together, so that at this very moment, you are the owner of the Mosque of Staten Island. Sister, where's that t-shirt? We're going back to Sunni. And on the other side, they said it couldn't be done.
And we got the mosque. And it was such a beautiful thing. And then we started to rehab the mosque.
It was off the chain. No, it was a beautiful experience, brother. I mean, to come and finally accomplish that and get that house back, headquarters back, that was monumental.
And we were just committed to do whatever we needed to do. Pull weeds, paint, scrub. And I remember going there, and we actually used toothbrushes to polish the brass because we wanted to make sure that everything was stellar and up to standard. We were excited. There was just a high level of enthusiasm everywhere.
Property is ours back in our hand. We had captured our capital back. It's like a military. We got our capital back, and man, I can't even use the right word to explain the joy of it. Just to have that house and accomplish what we set out to do.
And we had the white uniforms. We all wore white uniforms for the dedication of the mosque. Chicago had the red garrison caps. So that morning when it came time to raise the flag, I was asked by Brother Supreme Captain at that time, Ali Muhammad, Brother Frank, and myself, Brother Abdullah, who was the DI, Brother Sultan, and Brother Haroon were the honor guards who marched the flag to the pole and actually erected our flag for the first time under the leadership of Minister Farrakhan when we retrieved the mosque.
I always, from time to time, look at my father's suffering and what he went through just to stand up and to bring back the nation of Islam. And I know that I would not be the Muslim that I am right now if it were not for the courage and the spirit and the strength of our Father, who helped to bring me back to faith when I watched the total devastation. And he went through so much, and he still goes through a lot. If he were to put emphasis on what he went through, he won't focus on it for a reason, because it is so painful.
The minister said himself, he said one day he was crying and he was reflecting over his life and how he had nothing and how his father left him with nothing and how those who were in the nation prior to 75, who through the transition had acquired everything, all of the nation's accounts, the businesses, the properties, and they were entrusted with these things. And now here it is, a man that has sacrificed his life. And he's thinking about his family, he's thinking about his future, and he has nothing. And then he said as he was crying, he started to think and reflect over his father, and then it came to his mind, oh, I have everything. I have the word. He gave me the best of what he had. Some may have received the things, but he received the mind, heart, and spirit. And with the mind, heart, and spirit, he now can produce the reality of God as his father did.
40 years. And 4 is a number or signifies foundation. The minister reproved the veracity of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad knew the nation was gonna fall. He said it as much. He knew he was gonna depart. He's the architect of all of this. These things just didn't happen by chance. Even when we look at, well, the minister should have been the leader, but that nation, as it was not the one that his father and teacher wanted him to inherit. He had to start again from nothing to prove the power of God from the very beginning of making something out of what appears to be nothing. So to prove the power of Allah's presence, he let the whole thing go down, as it is written of Jesus, that if he destroyed the temple, he would rebuild it in 3 days. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad set it up so that Wallace could do his thing, so that the minister could come behind that work and prove what the Savior had taught us in the 1930s. Everybody is saying now, Elijah was right. Why? Because of what the minister has done. And he started this nation, not with the old followers, not with the laborers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, not with the ministers. He started by himself and with Mother Khadijah, and there were people who came to his aid to make it into what it is today. So he has laid a foundation upon a foundation that fulfills what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that the nation would fall, but it would rise again, and it would never fall. He would sow love into the hearts of the people for a man that they did not understand and recognize. That's what the minister has done in 40 years. That's how we know NFA. It will never fall again because it has been sown into the hearts and minds of millions of people all over the world.
Elijah Muhammad had that call. He told us, at least I heard him say it, and many of you can bear witness that he said it. He said, Allah destroyed the impossible when he created the heavens and the earth from nothing. So when Allah created the heavens and the earth from nothing, and then takes human beings and creates us from a tiny life germ, which is minuscule and microscopic, but yet he creates you and me from that, and then allows us to grow into knowledge, to become masters. This is a proof that there is nothing impossible. All we have to do is see it, believe that you can achieve it, then don't go to sleep. Get up and go to work, and you will bring it into existence. For the Holy Quran teaches, soon you shall see, and we shall see the ends for which men strive.